So the basics of climate change have been settled for some time now. Temperatures rising, carbon dioxide emissions are increasing, polar ice caps are melting. So why is this such a tricky topic to teach? Well, although 99% of climate scientists tend to agree on what the problems are, the issues lie in policy, as politicians, countries around the world, and international efforts still seem to disagree on what the best solution is. At the time, the Kyoto Protocol was a landmark decision in climate policy, especially at the international level. The process began back in 1997 when over 150 nations met in Kyoto, Japan and adopted the first international treaty on controlling and reducing greenhouse gases. Further meetings were held in Buenos Aires in 1998 and Bonn, Germany in 2001. The United States, however, was not part of these last talks in Germany. Then President George W. Bush, I guess, didn't feel as though it was necessary for the United States to commit to an international climate agreement. Canada was a big player, and they ratified their commitment to the Kyoto Accord in Parliament by the year 2002. They had pledged a target of reduction of 6% of greenhouse gas emissions by 2012, compared to 1990 levels of 461 megatons. The Kyoto Protocol specifically targeted 6 greenhouse gases: carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, hydrofluorocarbons, perfluorocarbons, and sulfur hexafluoride. Despite signing on to the Kyoto Accord, greenhouse gas emissions in Canada kept on increasing. In 2009, the United States, Canada, and over 180 other countries signed on to the Copenhagen Accord. This was slightly different than the Kyoto Accord, as it did not impose any financial penalties, and there's no real legal ramifications for countries who did not hold up their end of the bargain. As part of the Copenhagen Accord, Canada and the United States both agreed to reduce emissions by 17% by the year 2020 compared to levels in 2005. Now, when it was clear that Canada was not going to meet its Kyoto targets, then Prime Minister Stephen Harper and Minister of the Environment Peter Kent decided to formally withdraw Canada from the Kyoto Accord. Harper was well documented as opposing the Accord even before becoming Prime Minister. He was quoted as saying that the Accords are a socialist scheme to suck money out of wealth-producing nations. Kent blamed the United States and China, as they did not have any firm commitments to the Kyoto Accord and didn't think that any accord without them was actually meaningful. Canada became the only country to disassociate itself from the Accord, stating that, in part, they were able to do so because it would save them $14 billion in penalties that they would have had to pay out because they didn't meet their targets. While all of this was happening, the Copenhagen Accord was still in effect. Although by 2014, Environment Canada published a report saying that they probably wouldn't meet their Copenhagen targets. Around the same time, the United States announced that they would be weakening their Copenhagen goals, although they did commit financially to help contribute to the Green Climate Fund. 2015 came around, and that was kind of a turning of the tide in Canada, as current Prime Minister Justin Trudeau signed on to the Paris Agreement, and he stated that Canada's efforts will not cease. Climate change will test our intelligence, our compassion, and our will. The Paris Agreement sets a goal of trying to keep the overall increase in temperature to no more than 2 degrees, to go carbon-free by the year 2100, and to help less fortunate countries by contributing more financially. President Barack Obama at the time was able to ratify the United States commitment through executive action, bypassing the United States Senate. As part of Canada's contribution to the Paris Agreement, the federal government instituted carbon pricing and gave each province 2 choices. 1, come up with your own plan, or 2, follow the federal plan of $20 per ton starting in 2018 and increasing by $10 every year until the year 2022. Premiers Doug Ford of Ontario, Jason Kenney of Alberta, and Brian Pallister of Manitoba have taken the federal government to court, stating that it is unconstitutional to force carbon pricing. On June 1st, 2017, Donald Trump announced that the United States would be withdrawing from the Paris Agreement. Now, due to some weird technicalities, the United States couldn't actually announce a formal withdrawal process until November 4th, 2019. And the withdrawal process itself is a 1-year-long process, meaning that the United States can't formally be removed from the Paris Agreement until November 4th, 2020. That's an interesting date, as it's 1 day after the upcoming federal election where Donald Trump is coming up against Joe Biden. So now that brings us to today. It's hard to tell how the United States is going to fare in the battle against climate change, Although the federal government has pulled out, several state governors have decided to form a coalition committing to meeting the Paris climate goals even without any federal support. Canada is a little bit of a different story. In Canada, part of their commitment was to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 30% below the 2005 levels by 2030. That puts them at 511 megatons of CO2 equivalent, but under current policies, they're on track to only get to 673 megatons of CO2 equivalent. Now, the government has stated that if they include policies that are in the works or are yet to formally be complete, that they'll be able to get down to 588 megatons of CO2 equivalent, or 19% below 2005 levels. Still not quite the 30% target. So will Canada and the US be able to fulfill their Paris climate goals? Will they be able to contribute to this international effort successfully? Only time will tell.